This is the Rainbow Tunnel, a well-known landmark in Toronto. But Toronto has a lot of tunnels, many of them not as well known as this. Come with me and I'll tell you about some of them. This one was originally painted in the early 1970s by a teenager as a tribute to a friend of his who died in a car crash on the DVP the year before. For quite a while, the city considered it vandalism and they kept painting over it. And the guy kept coming back and repainting the rainbow until eventually the city realized this is better than plain concrete. But the city doesn't maintain it. That's done by a charity called Mural Roots. And it's a never-ending task because, as you can see, it gets hit by vandals all the time. Originally, there was just the rainbow on this side facing the DVP, but in 2013, Mural Roots added a mural inside as well as a rainbow on the far side. Both of them get vandalized as well, although I don't think they're hit as frequently as the side that's so highly visible from the DVP. And the rainbow on the far side, every time I come by here, it's dirty, so I'm assuming it's only cleaned by rainwater. Most Torontonians know about the PATH system, the network of tunnels connecting dozens of buildings in the downtown core, with over 30 kilometers of walkways spanning about a kilometer from east to west and closer to 2 kilometers from north to south. Up until about a decade ago, it was said to be the world's largest underground shopping complex, although it has since been surpassed by the equivalent system in Montreal. Many cities, especially those with inhospitable weather part of the year, have something similar, either underground like ours, or above ground like the Plus 15 system in Calgary. But there's more history in Toronto's PATH system than you might think.
The TD Centre, built in the 1960s, included underground shopping. Not a common feature in an office tower complex at that time, but a useful convenience for workers and a way of generating rental income for the building owners. And they had the foresight to plan for connections to other buildings. As redevelopment of the downtown core continued, many new buildings were connected, including not just office buildings but also City Hall, shopping centers like the Eaton Centre, hotels, and of course, subway stations. While the individual properties are privately owned, the system as a whole is coordinated by the city. But the oldest tunnel in the PATH system is about half a century older than the PATH system itself, and it has outlived both of the buildings it originally connected.
By the early 1900s, Eaton's owned almost the entire block west of Yonge, from Queen up to Dundas. In addition to retail stores, they used the space for warehouses, offices, and to operate their mail order business. The flagship store was on Yonge Street, and the Eaton's Annex was behind the flagship store. For the convenience of customers, Eaton's built a tunnel connecting the main store to the Annex. The main store was demolished to make way for the Eaton Centre in the 1970s. The Eaton Centre project was at one point proposed to include the demolition of Old City Hall. I talked about that in my video about Old City Hall. There's a magic link up here, and I'll put a link down in the description so you can find it when you finish watching this video. A fire in 1977 destroyed the Eaton's Annex, as well as destroying or damaging some of the other warehouse buildings, and whatever remained was subsequently demolished. But even though the buildings are gone, the tunnel is still in use. It's part of the PATH system, connecting the Eaton Centre to the Bell Trinity Square building, which was built on the site of the Eaton's Annex.
While we're in the area of Yonge and Queen, let's talk about a tunnel you've probably used without knowing its origins. Queen subway station has 2 passageways below the tracks to let people get between the northbound and southbound sides, one within the fare paid area and one outside it. Both of them use what was supposed to have been a transit station. When Toronto's first subway line was built in the early 1950s, there were plans to run an east-west line under Queen Street as well as the north-south line along Yonge. It wasn't going to be an actual subway, it would instead have brought the streetcars underground through the downtown core. So Queen Station was built with a second level roughed in beneath it, the basic structure for tracks and platforms, but that's about it. Ultimately, the east-west line was built along Bloor Street instead. If you're wondering whether Osgoode Station, where the University line crosses Queen Street, was built the same way, no it wasn't. They did some utility relocation work to clear space beneath it just in case, but there's no station down there. And while the Ontario line runs under Queen Street and will connect to both Queen and Osgoode stations, it can't reuse the lower level of Queen, which was only designed for streetcars.
Speaking of tunnels at subway stations, There's one here at Queen's Park Station that you might have seen but have almost certainly not used. You see, there are tunnels connecting the Ontario Legislative Building to some of the other government buildings in the area, and there's a tunnel from here at the station that connects to that. None of those tunnels, including the one at the station, are open to the general public. Speaking of Queen's Park, I did a video about that, both the park itself and the building on it. Links in the usual places. The landmark behind me is the Gooderham building, commonly known as the Flatiron Building. New York City has a Flatiron building too, but theirs came about a decade after this one. If you're familiar with the distillery district, the name Gooderham may ring a bell. It's the same family as the Gooderham and Wirtz distillery, and this building was the head office of the distillery for many years. George Gooderham was not just the head of the distillery, he was also the president of the Bank of Toronto, one of the forerunners of today's Toronto Dominion Bank. And their head office was just across the street on the corner of Church and Wellington. So he had a tunnel constructed under the street between his building and the bank building so that he and his money could pass safely and securely between the two buildings. The bank head office has since been demolished. It's been gone for over 60 years. But apparently the tunnel is still there, just blocked off at both ends. You may know that some of the windows on this side of the building are fake. They're part of the mural. The only ones that are real are the ones in the column of 5 windows in the middle. But here's a fun fact. Those are not original. Up until the 1970s, this side of the building had no windows at all. There's a pedestrian tunnel connecting Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport to the mainland. I talked about the history of this airport in my video about the history of aviation in Toronto. You know where to find the links. While the tunnel itself is relatively new, the idea of a tunnel connecting to the airport is not. It was part of the original plans, and in 1935, funding to build the tunnel was approved. But then there was a change of government, and the new government cancelled it. The idea of a tunnel came up again in the late 1990s, when the current city of Toronto was formed through amalgamation, but it didn't end up happening. Finally, in 2011, an agreement was reached to build a tunnel connecting the mainland to the airport on the island, and the tunnel opened in 2015. Here in the Golden Mile area of Scarborough, the government set up a large munitions manufacturing complex called the General Engineering Company, or GECO for short, during World War II. Well over 100 buildings were put up, connected by a warren of tunnels, whose purposes included providing services like electricity, water, and steam to the various buildings. Today it's a built-up area, but as you can see in this 1947 aerial photo, it was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields. Munitions factories have a nasty habit of going boom, and if I zoom in on the photo, you might see something that I think could be related. You see those things that appear to be rings around some of the buildings? My suspicion is those were probably earthen berms, so that if a building did explode, the force of the blast would be directed up and away from the neighboring buildings, limiting the damage. The workforce here was mostly women, because of course at the time, most of the menfolk were overseas fighting. Most of the women had never worked in a factory before, because prior to the war, when men were available, factory jobs were man's work. The women here were known as bomb girls. But despite their inexperience in factories, this complex had a safety record that no other factory complex doing munitions work in Canada could match. There was not a single major explosion here, and in fact, the only death on site occurred in a bus crash. These women were good, really good. Today, most of those original buildings have been demolished and replaced with newer buildings, but there are still somewhere around 20 of them remaining in use by local businesses. And yes, some of the tunnels still exist. They've been blocked off underground, so you can't just crawl through them and get into your neighbor's building. But the factories and businesses here do use some of that tunnel space as storage space. Behind me is one of Toronto's best-known landmarks, Casa Loma, designed by famed Toronto architect E.J. Lennox. I did a video about him, yada yada yada. If you visited here, you probably know that there are a couple of secret passageways inside the castle. You might also have walked through a musty-smelling tunnel over to the stables. But did you know that the stables were the location of a secret military program? Let's go over there and I'll tell you about it. It's another Second World War thing. After all, it's important to keep secret military information, well, secret. Because there were German spies operating even here in North America. And what better place to do it than at the stables of a mansion that's operating as a tourist attraction? So they put up signs saying the stables were closed for repairs, a perfectly believable scenario, and of course, polite Canadians obey polite signs. And that allowed the workers to come and go and to use the tunnel between the stables and the main building unobserved and without raising suspicion. A lot of the development of ASDIC, a sonar system used by Allied warships to detect and track enemy submarines, took place right here. Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning a few things about tunnels in Toronto that you might not have known before. If you did, you know what to do. Please like and subscribe.